All right. AEW broadcast Blood and Guts this past week. June 29th was the Wednesday night. This is their big annual War Games hat on a hat type of extravaganza where they managed to take the ultimate gimmick match and gimmick it up. And not only that was 1 hour of the programming, it was a 2-hour television program. Did you see the story that went out? Well, they had to change some things last minute because of COVID.
I did see that, yeah.
Do you think that's like golly, we're sorry about the first hour of this program. We really tried to do good shit, but we gave you this because we couldn't help it? Or did anybody really get sick? Or are they just trying to cover their ass?
I'm sure someone got sick. I don't think they're embarrassed about their show.
Well, I don't think they have the common sense to be. But nevertheless, I was embarrassed for them. Let's talk about Jim Ross is now on the second Ross. Jim Ross is now on the second. They're on the second Jim Ross. They got rid of the first one, put in a phony. He's on the second hour of Dynamite, and now he's hosting Rampage. There's speculation. Is JR getting too grumpy sitting through 2 hours of bad wrestling so that by the end of it, he's just like, oh, fuck, get me out of here. They put him on Rampage because the ratings of Rampage, the show that they have not given a shit about in months, has reached an all-time low over the past couple of weeks, down to 300-something thousand people. Is that possibly a ploy to get JR back on or get him on that show to get some of the viewers back? But
no.
Otherwise, they had Taz, Tony, and Excrement start the program, and I'd love to hear more Taz anytime. But as we saw pretty much at the Forbidden Door, no matter if they got Howard Cosell, if they got John Madden, if they got pick your era of great sportscaster, as long as Sockface is still sitting there, it's the shits. Can we all agree on that?
In terms of the commentary, I've been saying for a while that it's a problem, and it's all three. And there's a lot of people who want to ignore that it's all three. There are a lot of people who all of a sudden like that Tony Schiavone's the modern David Crockett. I think it's terrible. But there are people who, for some reason, like it. I think he's used perfectly as the interviewer, as long as you could tell him not to act like an idiot, which seems to be a problem.
Tony he'll see this bullshit that if he'd have seen this working for Crockett Promotions, it would have been followed by a bunch of the boys hitting the ring to beat up whoever was doing the fake phony shit. And Tony just laughs at it. Oh, that's great.
And that's what he does. And that's why he's terrible on commentary. Jim Ross is miserable on commentary. And if he's not miserable, he sounds miserable, which is just about the same thing when it comes to a commentary. And I think if the idea, because they did it on the pay-per-view, and then on Dynamite, he came out for the second hour, which ended up being the main event, the entire second hour. The idea of bringing out Jim Ross for either just the second hour or just the main event may be the single best way to use him. He'll get a pop every time you hit that music and the fans get to cheer for him because he's a legend. And he's going to be out there not long enough to get tired of everything and everyone. Because it's clear that him and Excalibur don't necessarily see eye to eye on things. And he's made shots on commentary. Again, I forget who it was. Someone debuted. It's one of my favorite moments ever. And Excalibur's like, oh my God, look who it is. He's amazing. He's in Japan. And Schiavone's, oh my God, it's amazing. This is great. Jim Ross like, who the hell is that? And that's what the commentary is. Taz is fantastic on commentary. And he brings out the best, I think, in both Excalibur in a funny way, and even in Jim Ross. And I thought Kevin Kelly really classed up the place, but it's probably too much to ask that Kevin Kelly leave New Japan and get hired full-time to be an AEW lead commentator. But I think there's a problem in commentary, and it's been there for a while. I think for some people, it's a barrier of entry, and I know other people don't want to hear that. But I think Schiavone and Jim Ross and Excalibur don't work as a trio. I don't think there's any reason why it needs to be three people in the booth. It should be Taz and a second person if you're going to use Taz in that role. And if it's going to be Excalibur, I'd rather it not be, but they love Excalibur. And he's the Young Bucks guy, so as long as the Bucks are there, Excalibur is going to be completely protected.
Yeah, we know that we're stuck with the guy. He's the shits. But you met Taz with Kevin Kelly. Then you've got basically Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. You've got an ex-jock that's well-spoken and has some back, even though Rogan was a stand-up comic, he's trained and he's the manly man, but you've got somebody that can provide some analysis, and you have the straight man announcer that can sell the product. But you've got the fucking idiot outlaw goof with a sock on his face, Tony, he's wearing an earring. He's my age. He's older than me. And he's trying to laugh at all these joking kids, and it just comes off stupid. But I agree, if they just an experienced ex-jock, ex-wrestler, color guy that's well-spoken, and a straight play-by-play announcer that can be your salesman that's not a gimmick, that's what you need on a wrestling show. And they've got 15 announcers, and they shuffle them around in all kinds of combinations, and they don't get to the root of the problem. It's either most of their announcers are either too amateur or too old. That's it. Anyway, so the first match on this program, now that you have seen it happen, can you explain to me, Brian, what Jane by Jefferson Starship has in any way to do with the mascot of this program, our little dog Pockets?
Nothing other than he used it on the Indies, and I just want to clarify to people that thought I was saying that Jefferson Starship was the death of the San Francisco Sound. I was saying Orange Cassidy using Jefferson Starship was the death of the San Francisco Sound, not the other way. And no, it's a song that he must like. He picked it to be his indie theme music, and now he'll be happy every time he comes out.
So Tony Khan spent money, because this is not free. You can't just play it. It's commercial music. He spent money on a song for this thing that has nothing to do with the fucking jack-off that they're playing it for to come out to the ring, but he liked it. He used it on outlaw shows. So let's just spend however many thousands of dollars to let this goof play a song that has no correlation to him whatsoever. That's basically where we're at here, right?
Tony is very open to licensing music.
He licensed Punk's great. Punk's the biggest draw and the biggest star in the company. And I'll even go with old Ruby Soho, and Lars Fredricksson's a wrestling fan. You think Grace Slick is a fan of Pockets?
I don't think Grace Slick watches wrestling. I think she just paints, actually.
Yeah.
Very smart woman. I miss her on TV.
She probably didn't give him a deal then, because she's not a fan. And Muffin Top Taylor is back with the Puddin' Gang. So anyway, that was the first match. Pockets with his Puddin' Gang against the other page with Dan Lambert, and these two embarrassed the profession on national television for 16 minutes. But then it got better. Christian Cage now that we can't see Danielson and we can't see Punk, is he going to have to be our new favorite promo?
I put on Twitter, this is 2 weeks in. This is the best work he's done in his entire career. He was always talented. He was always really good. He got a chance in TNA after he left WWE to be the top guy. To me, nothing ever really felt great. Nothing ever took. This is fucking great. He's doing the best work he's ever done. 2 weeks in, I'm loving this.
Well, and I was there in TNA, but I've got the PTSD from that era. He was a babyface there primarily, was he not?
That's right.
Well, now we know that was a drastic mistake, like a lot of others they made. He comes out dressed like a diehard villain, just fucking great. He's booed out of the arena before he could even speak. He's been asked to apologize for his remarks about Jungle Boy's family and especially his father last week being dead, so he apologizes. I'm sorry, your entire family isn't dead, except for your mom. And then Mouse, call me. What a fuck this fuck. And then, of course, he requested a match, but he never said it was for me. And the music played. The only thing I didn't like about this interview was it wasn't long enough. I can sit there and watch him calmly and self-assuredly and confidently just throw off little heelish asides and just verbally eviscerate those people. And he's throwing it off naturally. And it's exceptional. And then he obviously requests a match. It wasn't for me. They play the music. Here comes Dino Douche. And I'm thinking, can even Christian at this point make anything out of this slug? Okay, if he's a stooge servant, maybe we can accept it. But here's where they made a mistake. And this is, again, not only inexperienced booker and lack of quality control probably from producers that may or may not be able to tell Tony what the fuck. They booked Dino Douche against Serpentico. Serpentico is, would this be charitable saying he's 5'6" and 150 pounds, Brian? Is that charitable, or is that about, from your eyeballing it, is that about right?
I think he may be slightly bigger, maybe 170 and 5'9", if I had to guess.
Okay, still, the dinosaur is big and he's tall and he's jacked up. What they, I'm sure, trying to read their minds, and my God, talk about going slumming. What they thought was, well, if we put Dino in with this little guy, then he'll look even bigger and it's going to be a squash match and he's just going to beat him and blah, blah, blah. And that'll get heat on Dino. Here's the problem why that's exactly incorrect. Because this guy was so not only ridiculous looking to be put against Dino, but also from the time that the dinosaur got in the ring, did you see Serpentico doing the fake acting, I'm scared, comedy acting scared? Yeah. Oh, putting his hands up, oh no, and cringing. When you put a monster heel against an underneath babyface that looks good, that he doesn't have to be big. You want the big guy to be wrestling a littler guy, but not going to comedy small. You get a nice, good-looking kid, underneath wrestler, babyface, with a nice smile and a decent physique. And when the monster heel beats that kid up and squashes him, it gets the point across. It makes the monster look like a monster, makes him look like a big badass, like he can do some damage. And people might have a little bit of sympathy for the guy that's getting his ass kicked. But when you put a monster heel against a little visually comedic jack off like that, that's not only visually looks like comedy, but is acting funny, like I'm not really scared, but I'm going to act that way. And then the monster heel starts doing big moves to this little guy and throwing him around. That's another reason they put him in there, because he can throw this guy far. But then you get the fans behind your heel. Because, yes, this shit looks impressive. Look how far he threw him. Look how easy he picked him up. Those are cool moves. We don't care about this fucking goof wearing the mask because it's all comedy to begin with, because elsewise they wouldn't put a guy at 150 pounds in there. If it was serious, he wouldn't be acting funny. It wouldn't be another masked guy when you're pushing the masked star and you put him in with a masked jobber. Now you got two masked guys. The whole thing was visually and or psychologically set up to make the people cheer for the heel and his cool moves instead of being mad at him and booing him because he was abusing someone of lesser physical capability. It looked funny visually. It was performed comedically. Therefore, the people cheered the guy you're trying to get them to boo. But if a normal, athletic-looking, underneath guy that was trying to fight the bigger guy and unfortunately just got the shit kicked out of him because the bigger guy's the monster heel, that's not funny looking, and you get the desired response from the people's minds subliminally. How can something that simple be over these people's fucking heads?
Well, who's in the back that's going to say that? That's how.
Quick win with the snare trap. And then he chokeslammed the guy on the floor, flat of his back on the floor. With their injury rate, it was necessary to get further heat on Dino now that he's more popular than ever because he beat up this little comedy guy. It was necessary to chokeslam that guy on the floor, too. So hopefully we'll never see the guy again. Then we know the chokeslam on the floor was deadly.
Beyond the actual things like that or the bad acting in the match, what do you think about the idea of Luchasaurus coming out there, new outfit, dark outfit, and now he's a heel with Christian Cage?
I like it. I like the fact that Cage has a big monster stooge that will do his dirty work. I don't know how that they are going to explain that Cage is able to persuade Dino to do all these things now and turn on his back on his friend Jungle Boy. Maybe are they holding him? Are they holding Dino by a contract like they were holding Wardlow? He's got to perform against his will. Who knows? If the guy would listen, we've established that the dinosaur is a fucking mental idiot because he's got all the tools in the world to be a top star in wrestling. Stuff you can't teach, the size, the physique, the genetics. But mentally, he's fucking 5 years old and he's got to do his backflips. He doesn't understand that just because you can do shit doesn't mean you should. And his matches always go south. If Cage can take him under his wing and he will listen to Christian Cage could probably teach him how he ought to be working. But I don't think there's no evidence that this guy listens to anything because he's been at one point or another in every developmental program and ain't made it yet. So I like the concept. I'm not convinced they're doing it with the right guy.
It'll be interesting to see also what they do when Jungle Boy actually reappears. I don't know how long he'll be out, but obviously he wasn't there at all this week. And then I guess he'll go through Luchasaurus to get to Christian Cage?
Oh boy. Talk about going around your elbow to get to your wrist. But
I hope he doesn't show up with Marco. Can you imagine?
No, I think they get away from him just because he was an insult to the profession and an embarrassment to television and just a whiny little piece of shit on camera. They never actually ran him off until people accused him of being improper with the opposite sex or something, did they?
I don't think that had anything to do with it, and they never even ran him off. They just stopped calling.
Oh, maybe, I'm sorry. It was the other guy that forced...
His brother, I think, it did something, right?
It was the other guy that... Well, it was his brother did something, and it was the other outlaw guy that forced Dwarf Dong Sucker to suck the dong in the ring, and whatever. So there was Tony Schiavone with an interview in the back with Wardlow and Scorpio Sky. And we left him off the list. Scorpio Sky's injured, too. He hasn't wrestled in over a month. He's got some kind of injury, even though he's still the TV champion.
And again, I want to reiterate, they should have had Wardlow squash him in LA for the TV title the night after the MJF match, or the Dynamite after the MJF match.
Right. But they didn't. And now they did a promo face-to-face where Tony said that they had agreed to no physicality. So now they have had so many constant, one right after another, physical attacks in the backstage interviews that they have to differentiate the interviews now by saying, you guys have promised you won't fight in this one. You've done something way too much when you have to start a segment by telling people that they're not going to see an angle. And then they talk to each other and they want to fight, and Wardlow wasn't bad here. But then Scorpio Sky says, okay, for the TV title next week in a street fight. They can't just have a match. Now, is this the first time they've ever wrestled each other? It has to be, right?
Well, I don't know, because Scorpio Sky used to be a babyface, but I just don't remember any interaction between the two of them.
But Wardlow hasn't wrestled that often on AEW television.
No, he hasn't.
So I'm saying I'm pretty sure that, they may have wrestled somewhere in Oshkosh, Wisconsin at the fucking farm center. But on television, they've never had a match before. And their first match is not only going to be for the title, but it's going to be a street fight. For what reason? The reason to have another no DQ match? Lazy booking.
Well, let me ask you, though, before you declare it lazy booking, if Scorpio Sky is indeed injured to the point where he can't work a regular match, but they want to have Wardlow go over him for the belt one way or another instead of just awarding him the belt or another interim belt, would this be a way around that?
Okay. If I want to get the belt on Wardlow and Scorpio Sky is injured, am I going to have Wardlow fucking surprise Scorpio Sky, possibly due to some inadvertent distraction by his Putz manager, Dan Lambert, at the improper time, and Wardlow does one move and beats him? Or am I going to send the guy that's injured out to have a 10-minute street fight and still get beat?
Yeah, you may have a point.
What the fuck? He's hurt. So let's not have him have a regular match. Let's put him in a street fight. That way we can cover up the fact that he's injured when he's getting hit with garbage cans and put through tables. They don't know how to have a walk and talk street fight in this company. Everything that they do is going to have risk of injury. So next week's a street fight.
Hey, let me ask you this too, because it looks like I'm going to guess Wardlow is going to go over Scorpio Sky and win this TV belt, and I don't know what else you do with Scorpio Sky right now. Ethan Page, I feel like every single time we've seen him on TV lately, he's been losing, and losing to Miro is one thing. Lost to Orange Cassidy on a body slam on this episode. Clearly, he's not right now in their plans in any way. Would you consider at this point getting rid of Lambert? Because he's not bringing anything to the table, and I think the AEW fans are sick of him.
Well, it's run its course because it never developed, really. He was saying at the start, the people hated him because he was saying the same shit that I said, which is saying the same shit that all wrestling fans that have been alive for longer than 10 years say, which is this shit doesn't make any sense and it looks like a bunch of children playing with each other. That's not any epiphany that somebody would have had after serious study. You look at it and you think that. For any fans of actual wrestling, the way it was for 120 years, this is an insult. Most of the shit that goes on this, it's either an insult or a head scratcher. So Lambert started out saying that, and naturally, all the people in the building that paid to see this shit don't want to hear that they got shitty taste. So they boo him. But then within weeks, it became, instead of a guy who was showing up and saying what he legitimately felt, remember we talked about it. Lambert even did interviews on websites saying, yes, well, I actually really believe some of the things I say on this television program, which totally killed the gimmick for anybody that saw that, because the only reason to have him doing it is if he really felt that way and you wanted people to think that. If he comes out and says, I'm just saying this shit because I'm being a heel, well, fuck you, then I'm smart to your deal. And yes, he did mean some of the shit because it's an observation that you can't deny when you look at it. But they didn't give him any credibility, his guys any credibility. They kept doing the same thing over and over after he'd already exposed that he didn't really mean it and he worked for the company. And and then it's just been the same thing, only not even really as pointed. And he started writing shit down and memorizing it. And then they put him with questionable fucking talent of various kinds. It was supposed to be a shooter group. So he puts in Page and Sky in with the shooters. Even if they can shoot, that's not their fucking gimmicks. So nobody believes that. And then he gets, the green MMA women. Ty Conti gets a ton of heat with that bitch face, but did we discover she's one of the ones that can't work? I can't even remember. Paige Van Zant was great to get heat until we saw her try to do something in the ring. So I think Lambert's, it's like everything else, but maybe even more so with the booking. It's all over the place, and it never came together as a reason why all these people would be together on the same side, interacting, whatever the fuck. That's what I think. That's just me. But you know who was next, Brian? Do you remember?
Was it the FTR match?
It was Max Caster and the Guns. Can you give me a beat?
You know what? Hold on. I got one of my things over here. That's fine.
You only got one of your things over there? I keep both of my things with me.
No, I don't like that.
That's the control voice from The Outer Limits.
I don't like that. Nope.
There you go.
No.
That's a beat.
All right, I'll go back to that one. Hold on. That's a beat.
Yo, listen.
Wait. I didn't know we settled on the beat. No. All right, I'll go back to the one you like.
Sounds like my first ex-wife.
Number Johnny 5. Hold on. Was this what you liked?
Yeah. Yo, listen. Acclaimed and the Guns, we don't rap with no undertones. We about to beat the shit out of a juggalo. Danhausen's a lightweight. How you gonna cheer a white guy doing whiteface? Embarrass my brothers again. We gonna make you drink all the tap water in Flint. Send your ass to the trash, boys. This is what you get for calling out the ass boys.
And then we get some of this.
Who says rap ain't music? We just did it right there.
What do you think of before we move on from the rap, which you just recited, what do you think of Max Caster's rap this week?
I liked it. He's growing on me. He's obviously trying, right? And the thing is with this combination, because Bowens is injured too, although they screwed that up here shortly. We'll talk about it in a second. The Ass Boys, I love in the ring, and they're kicking ass as a tag team, but we haven't really heard a lot of them talk yet. And Caster is so comfortable on the microphone, and he's doing this shit, so he's kind of like the talk, and they're the work, and I think they're a little bit farther advanced than his in-ring, and his verbal is a little farther advanced than theirs. So they're doing good together. But
so naturally, they'll split them up next week.
Well, I'm sure they will, because they've already teased it, except whose side is their father on? You think that Billy is going to turn on his boys and go with Caster and Bowens? So this match was Max Caster and the Ass Boys against Danhausen and FTR. Because apparently the Ass Boys have been having problems with Danhausen, and they challenged Danhausen, so Danhausen comes out and does the promo, which if he was hosting a local horror movie theater, that'd be great, or if he's doing some other type of show business. But as I mentioned before, from the first time I heard his first promo, I think this guy's funny, and I'll never want to see him wrestle, because then I'll hate him. Because now that you put it in a wrestling context, what the flying French fried titty fuck is going on here? This is the first match I've seen, right? And you made me watch it.
Well, first of all, I didn't make you watch anything.
You asked me to watch it because it's FTR.
Tony Khan made you watch it. He's the one who booked it. Don't blame me.
You talk about don't skip FTR and the Ass Boys. Just Danhausen's not in it much.
Okay, let's be honest. I did say to you, don't skip this match just because you see Danhausen. Don't let Danhausen's involvement and whatever spell he has put on you dissuade you from seeing everyone else who shines in this match.
All right. So Danhausen did a promo and brought out FTR, and I wrote then, this is like an expensive rock and roll fantasy camp where an amateur gets to duet with Robert Plant. Just Danhausen teaming with FTR in all seriousness, and we'll get to the worst insult later on. So, in my opinion, the Gun Boys, Austin and Colton, have the potential to be the best in-ring heel tag team in the business in a few years. They work hard, they get it. They're very animated, and when they smooth out and get a little more muscle memory on their experience, they're going to drop about the 10% of the animation that makes them look a little awkward. And the rest of the animation is welcome because nobody else does it anymore. But they don't just stand up and wander into something. They fucking charge into it. They stagger. They fucking do the drunk cell, whatever the fuck. They're working their ass off. When they get a little smoother, they're going to gear that back about 10%. They're going to be awesome. And obviously FTR is flawless in most everything that they do. They go to the break getting some heat on Danhausen, and they come back from the break, and Danhausen is trying to quote-unquote wrestle. And it has still never been explained, has it? Not only what this fucking guy's deal is, but why, if this guy is allowed to wrestle in AEW, why can't anybody else off the street come in? Why? Because he has no physique. He's got no size. He doesn't look in any way intimidating. They have told us nothing about how he may look weird, but he's secretly trained with Gene LaBelle and, fucking judo. It's just a guy that looks like a normal fucking guy with his face painted, wearing a gimmick that's being allowed to get in the ring and wrestle with professional athletes. And there's no explanation for it. And if he can do it, why can't anybody do it? And actually, from looking at this television program and their roster, maybe I'm the one that's wrong. Anybody can do it. So at one point, one of the ass boys, I can't remember who it was, actually set it up for Danhausen to tag Dax as a hot tag instead of just laying there and letting Danhausen tag. He actually put something into it. But then Dax and Cash both made a comeback on both Gun Boys while referee Aubrey was sitting there. It just went into a double comeback. There wasn't even a... Dax made a single comeback, bumped both heels a time or two, shoots one off, hits a false finish cover. The other heel makes a save, brings Cash in. They just jumped in and decided to do multiple German suplexes on the heels. At the same time, referee had no problem with it. This is what I was so... They just waste everything. Danhausen signals he's going to go for the go-to-sleep, Punk's move. But Billy Gunn draws the referee, and Bowens, who's been in a wheelchair now for, 2 months on the program, because he's really been hurt. Legitimately.
His knee, I believe.
So he gets out of the wheelchair, slides in the ring, stands up with the crutch, and swings it and hits his own man instead, or his own partner, his own side, and Danhausen covers him and gets one of the guns and gets the 1, 2, 3. So they wasted Bowens getting out of the chair. If they were going to, you could have done something with that to at least let these guys cheat and win once. But instead, he gets out of the chair and fucks up, and his team still loses. So now he's just a complete idiot. And you've got Danhausen teamed up with FTR, which again, let's throw fucking a Fozzy roadie in on stage with the Rolling Stones, and he's the one that gets the fucking pin. Not the tag team champions of every organization in the world except this one. And then, because the Guns and the Acclaimed lost, they got mad and started pissing at each other, and Billy Gunn shoves his own boys and takes the Acclaimed side. So now are we going to see a family feud between are they going to screw up everything we enjoy? What'd you see here?
Well, let me first say it's really nice to see, considering what's happened the last several years. From the moment that music hits and you see Cash and Dax walk out, there's a confidence on their face that they haven't had. They know they're made right now. The fans anointed them. The Young Bucks were pushed. Other tag teams have been pushed. The fans decided on their own that FTR deserves better. And look at what's happening right now. The Gun Club, as I believe their Christian name is, have impressed me. You called it out first before I ever saw it, but now I've been paying extra attention. Forgive me for not knowing the names, and I'm not trying to insult them. But
Austin and Colton.
I was going to say the littler one. Is that Austin?
Well, Austin is a little bit farther advanced than Colton. He may be the elder one. I don't know, though.
And Colton's the one you said reminds you of Kurt Hennig?
No, I think it was Austin.
Oh, was it Austin? Okay. I wasn't sure. I was trying to watch the match and figure that out, but I was going to say Austin was actually really impressive. I thought Colton was the one you were raving about.
They're both good.
Max Caster has more personality and is so clever on the mic. I agree that he hasn't really shined in the ring as of yet.
But he very seldom, he doesn't have a lot of single matches, and in these six-mans, he's very seldom in.
And the other thing is, every one of those people that came out, and I'll talk about Danhausen in a second, including Danhausen, though. But every one of those people that came out, Max Caster, as soon as that music hit, that place exploded. And they were ready for it. They were into it. When FTR's music hits, place goes completely nuts. FTR's getting bigger pops than the Bucks ever have in AEW. Think about that. Again, that's on their own. That's the fans.
Well, it's not a surprise to me, because if you show somebody something long enough, they can determine which is the quality and which is the cheap knockoff. And that's what's happened. That's why at the start of AEW, when I said, what in the world is Tony Khan doing signing all of these indie guys with limited potential to long-term contracts because they have a fad audience? And the fad audience don't stay with you. They weren't legitimately over. They had a fad audience, and that's wearing out now that the one note of all of their jokes is old. Whether it's the guy with his hands in his pockets, the guy that's spraying the cold spray, or the fucking same moves they were doing when they were in their 20s, regardless of who the particular indie darling was that Tony couldn't get enough of, people are tired of that shit, because it's just that. It's when you saw it on the indies once every 6 months and maybe in your local rec center, you might have got a kick out of it. But every week on television, it gets old and they don't know how to do anything else.
Well, what I was going to say about Danhausen is, and I understand there are a lot of fans who really like him, and I like the personality. I don't like him as an in-ring wrestler participating at this level. When I say at this level, teaming up with FTR, who are the best in-ring tag team in the fucking business, against a young emerging tag team, against someone who's showing a lot of potential.
Or on national television at all, because it just makes the wrestling business look even sillier than we've managed to make ourselves look already.
Well, again, a month ago, FTR were teaming with CM Punk on Dynamite. And now they're teaming with Danhausen. With that said, and I'm not justifying it in any way that's going to change your mind on anything. If the goal was, let's finish up whatever the hell they've done with Danhausen and the Ass Boys, which I don't know what that is, then I guess this finished that up. You got him on TV. People got to see him. I don't know if it was his hometown or something. And we'll move past it. I mean, but the first hour of the show, you had Orange Cassidy, and then you had Danhausen. I think it's the first time they've ever both been in a match on the same show on AEW.
And we can hope it'll be the last. So coming up next, people we would like to see, or at least one, Jay Lethal was with Sanjay Dutt and old Satnam Singh, and they're promoting the Ring of Honor pay-per-view that's taking place on July 23rd. They are having a Ring of Honor pay-per-view, even though Ring of Honor has no television program, no talent roster, and all of its championships are basically now held by people in AEW. But they're going to do a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. 3 weeks after the one they just did with the fucking New Japan guys that nobody understood.
To be fair, and I'm not, again, justifying any of this, but one of the clips we did not play from the media scrum, Tony Khan addressed the fact that this is kind of the beginning of a relaunch of Ring of Honor, and he is actively working on trying to find them a television partner right now. So,
well, good. And when they do find a television partner and start doing a television program, then they should do pay-per-views that they can promote on their television program. But since they can't promote anything on this television program besides chaos, how are they going to be able to keep it straight with people? Oh, now, that was a New Japan and AEW pay-per-view last week, but this one in 3 weeks is going to be a Ring of Honor pay-per-view, even though all the AEW guys are going to be on it because Ring of Honor doesn't technically exist. But that's why we've all got 15 championships, so there'll be enough belts to defend to go around. There is no focus here on anything. And where is Samoa Joe? Jay Lethal's been saying, when are you going to come back? When are you going to show up? When are you going to fight me? Has there been any explanation for why the babyface that's being trashed and verbally talked about and diminished is not coming to fight this guy? If he's injured, we understand. If he's in jail, we understand. If he's fully capable of and ambulatory and able to move around, and why don't he come and fucking find this guy and shut him up? How do you bury Samoa Joe by just saying he won't come and fight me? And there's no rebuttal and there's no other side. And the announcers aren't saying, well, you know very well Joe would be here if not for what? But we get a 30-second pre-tape with Jay Lethal. And the following match, after we get 30 seconds of Jade Lethal talking, instead of seeing Jade Lethal wrestling, we get to see Jade Cargill against Layla Gray. Leela? I guess she's not on Futurama.
It was Layla.
Layla! You're the shits. So Jane and Stokely Carmichael did a promo, and Stokely can talk his ass off. I'd like to actually...
Stokely Hathaway. Stop calling him Stokely Carmichael.
There you go. All right. Malcolm Hathaway. He's much better for Jane than Mark Sterling was. And I'd like to see him actually maybe with some top guys. We could actually see more of whether he can do anything or not. But they did a promo, and then Jane beat Layla. And then 2 more girls ran in. It was Ember Moon and Chris Statlander, but they beat up Jane and one of her baddies. But then Layla Gray, the girl that Jane just beat, came back in and jumped the baby faces that were helping her. And then the baby faces got the shit kicked out of him, including by the girl that Jane just kicked the shit out of that turned around and attacked the people that were trying to help her after. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
What happened here?
What happened was Jade beat Layla Gray, and then I guess Layla Gray, because they kind of put her over when Stokely got on a microphone after the match. He kind of put her over, and I guess it was kind of her audition, like the Blackpool Combat Club with Wheeler Yuta. And they accepted her, but before they had a chance to officially anoint her, Chris Statlander and Athena ran in there and caused chaos, and then she ended up joining with them.
I don't know how much I need her.
Let me just say also, I think this is a great move. Layla Gray is one of the best looking women I've ever seen in the professional wrestling business. So good move signing her, Tony.
All righty. Well, now we had Jim Ross's entrance, Boomer Sooner, because it's the second hour of the show and time for our main event. But they did you see the Rampage plug for Friday night? The big match on Rampage Friday night?
It's the Bucks match, right?
Well, there's one of those, but the big match.
I don't remember.
The one we're all waiting for.
I don't remember.
The Royal Rampage. A 20-man 2-ring battle royal, and the winner gets a shot at Jon Moxley. Another battle royal a week after the last battle royal to determine who the fuck was going to whatever the fuck they were doing. But now this is...
Well, to be fair, when was the last time you saw a 2-ring battle royal?
Well, I just saw a 2-ring match last night. That pretty much all I want to see of that, but I guess they had to do it because they already had 2 rings set up. Another battle royal for another title shot and blah, blah, blah. So they lower the cage. They do the blood and guts package. They give the rules. Smiley Roberts herniates himself on the introductions. Here comes the Jericho appreciators. Was that an homage to A Clockwork Orange? Where did the red outfits and the ridiculous hats come from?
It came from the ridiculous mind of Chris Jericho, who seems to be blessed with the worst ideas anyone's ever thought of, and then he convinces other people who are susceptible to bad ideas to go along with them, and then usually after the fact they realize, why the fuck did I do this?
But it looked a little Clockwork Orange-ish with the outfits, because I haven't seen that movie in 40 fucking years.
Yeah, they wore white, didn't they?
No, I think it was orange. Maybe, I don't know.
It was a Clockwork Orange, but the Droogs wore white.
Well, A Clockwork Orange to me is like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I haven't seen either one of those movies in 40 years, and I tried to watch 2001 a couple of years ago and realized why I haven't seen it in 40 years, because that's the worst fucking movie it was ever made. And the soundtrack and the sound effects bothered Harley. She would actually every time that the spaceship noise she'd get up and walk out of the room and snort. So anyway. So it was 6-on-6. I thought the War Games Blood and Guts supposed to be 5-on-5, but somehow they got 6 in here. Right? Because it was Jericho and Sammy Guevara and Garcia and Hager and Mac Daddy Mac and Cool Hand Luke against Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli and what was his name? Yuli Wheeler?
Yuli Wheeler.
And Santana and Ortiz and I've missed one.
Yul Wheeler. I did it again. Wheeler Yuta, Moxley, Claudio, Santana, Ortiz, Eddie Kingston.
So 6-on-6. And they started it out, and obviously the original War Games rules, until everybody's in, nobody can win, and then the actual match beyond, as Dusty called it, starts. So Claudio starts with Sammy Guevara, and the first fucking move, bless him, they try to do the deal where Claudio was going to go through the ropes from one ring to the other, and Sammy was going to leap over, and Sammy leaped over and landed on Claudio's back and was up there for about 5 or 6 seconds, and Claudio just had to backdrop him. But Claudio opened this thing hot, and what a fucking talent. And the difference is visual. You can see it in just the way he carries himself and everything he does. It's not, there's no wasted motion. He's poised. He can move around. Claudio, and he's a real man. He's got size. He's strong as a bull. I like Sammy as a heel. As we've talked about this from the time we first saw him. Great slappable face. Incredible attitude. We found out, obviously, that he's a blithering simpleton and he's going to paralyze himself and have not nearly the career he could have if he stopped doing all this bullshit. But if he had somebody guiding him and he'd listen to him, he could be a red-hot fucking heel for a long period of time in this business.
He has that guy, Chris Jericho.
Oh,
he's been guiding him and he listens to him, and look at where he is today.
Yeah, so they went to a break. And when they came back, old Wheeler got in. And he did multiple German suplexes. So now this was like the third match on this 2-hour program where everybody grabs somebody by the waist and does 6 or 7 German suplexes in a row. And then early in the match where everybody's got to withstand that and just go on. So they at least made this make sense, when the odds are even, the baby faces should be kicking ass. And when the heels have the advantage, the heel should be kicking the babyface's ass. So they pretty much stuck to that. At that point, it was Claudio and Sammy and Yuta and whoever. Here comes Hager. And he does a face-off with Claudio, and that That would be good, except Claudio's great and Hager is the drizzling shits. And he has no face, no oomph. His work is sloppy. But the heels got the heat on the baby faces. And then here comes Moxley in with a chair. So now obviously the door is locked, but every 5 minutes they were doing the time period, the door gets open, somebody gets to go in, so Moxley brings in a chair. He just can't help himself. He just cannot help himself. He thinks...
You know what?
What he does is wrestling.
I completely agree with what you're saying right now, and it was around this point in time I said to myself, I bet you he's going to have thumbtacks. I knew it. I just knew it because of the stupidity we see in all of his matches. I knew there would be thumbtacks.
So I made the notes. Moxley does Moxley stuff. Garcia ends up bleeding. And then all of the Blackpool Combat Club guys get all the heels. And you know the thing they do where they sit the heels down and they're behind them and they're elbowing in the pocket of the neck where they can't possibly hurt anybody anyway, so they could actually lay it in if they wanted to.
If you laid it in, that's right.
Yeah, well, go back. I dare anybody. I will give anybody that goes back and watches this and says that this is not the fakest bunch of shit you've ever seen on a fucking wrestling program, I will give you $500. Moxley were not even good enough to be called fake elbows. He was just making the motion while the heel was sitting there in front of him, not even bothering to sell it because he wasn't touching him. And then Cool Hand Luke gets in, and because the baby faces are on top, he starts running away from everybody. And the next one in was Ortiz. And now he's got the panda bear makeup, which is from what movie is that from that everybody's told me?
Dead Presidents.
Dead Presidents. Well, he looks like a goddamn dead Puerto Rican. Because he's got a white face, black circles around his eyes, and now that they've shaved his head, he painted his head red. So he got his bald head painted red, and he's wearing panda makeup, and it looked ridiculous. And they go to another break. And they come back, and here comes Mac Daddy, and now he brings a chair in. And now the heels start getting their heat again, but they show a VTR videotape replay, by the way, for folks wondering what that... The VTR of during the break, Moxley dumped out a bag of broken glass. And even if it was gimmick sugar glass, people don't know that. So, how fucking ignorant and stupid can a human being be? If I'm sitting there watching a television program, a wrestling match, and somebody dumps out a bunch of broken glass, I said, well, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and that guy's a complete idiot. Because I know wrestling's a work because they tell me constantly, but now they got broken glass in there that don't work with anybody, so now they're just idiots. And what is this? Is this the goddamn, the cockfight down the street? Are we going in a barn to watch chickens with razor blades on their fucking feet fight each other? How unsavory can this be? Now they're rolling around in broken glass. And then he pile drives one of the heels on the broken glass and he gets his juice that way. Of course, that wasn't the finish because the match hasn't even really started yet. You can't win it. Everybody's not in yet. If Moxley worked in a carnival, he'd be the one asking to have the geek job. Broken glass, and the thumbtacks are coming up. It makes wrestling and wrestlers look like the worst kind of trash, filth people. Stupid, ignorant, trash, filth people.
Well, beyond that, even if you don't want to use that argument, we've seen it all too many times. The thumbtacks, I get you'll get an initial pop as soon as you open the mysterious black bag. No one knows what it is until we empty the thumbtacks. Everyone knows what it is, and they'll still pop when you empty the thumbtacks. And then it becomes a spot we've seen way too often to mean anything.
Over and over, constantly. Stupid. And how you... Here's the thing. There's people in the match that have to fall and take bumps in this ring on these thumbtacks. And I don't know, maybe things have changed now in today's modern wrestling. But I guarantee you, if you'd have went in the locker room of WrestleMania 10 in Madison Square Garden or Starrcade 86 in the Omni or Greensboro, and you said, I need 12 guys to go out and work in a ring filled with thumbtacks, raise your hands. You wouldn't have got a goddamn soul. Because they'd be going, what? You said what? You want us to do what? How fucking stupid is that? So Moxley was bleeding, and Cool Luke was bleeding, and Santana comes in with not only a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, but they handed a table in too. And at that point, I said, how many hats can this hat wear? The ultimate gimmick match. 2 rings. A steel cage with a roof around both of them. No disqualification. No time limit. To win the match, your opponents have to be incapacitated. So now we also need barbed wire baseball bats, thumbtacks, broken glass, tables, chairs, and also we're going to go up and fight on the top. So, but anyway, Santana got in, was in there for about a minute and a half, gave Garcia a rock bottom, and his left knee buckled, and he went down selling, and we never saw him again. I think they took him out.
I heard from people that were there that for at least a long time, if not the remainder of the match, he was kind of down on the ground talking, or at least down towards the corner of the ring talking to the referees.
Well, at least he had something to do to keep busy while everybody else was fucking themselves up. But now this guy's may be hurt, and he did a rock bottom. And that's the point. Shit can happen no matter what you're doing, even if it's safe shit or simple shit. And here these morons are diving off everything in sight and constantly having surgery, being operated on, being paralyzed, being fucking out of action, whatever the case. So then Moxley started stabbing a guy in the head with chopsticks. Chopsticks. He actually had them in his back pocket so he could stab the guy in the head with chopsticks. When's the last time you brought chopsticks as a weapon to a street fight, Brian?
That's one weapon I haven't used.
It's just they did this shit in the garbage match circuit where they think, what can we use that are common household objects that people know will hurt, and we're really hurting ourselves, but it'll get a pop? One of these garbage promotions a couple years ago said they had a match with Legos in the ring because everybody knows how bad it hurts when you step on a Lego. So it's like children in Romper Room are now providing the foreign objects for these goddamn badass wrestlers. So there was a nice close-up of Mac Daddy fake choking Moxley with the barbed wire bat. Mac Daddy had it near his throat, near Moxley's throat, and he was just sitting there listening because Moxley, while he was being choked, was talking to him, telling him what to fucking do. Nice close-up there. Then Jericho came in with another bat, another baseball bat. Hit people with it twice, fake-looking shots, and then somebody kicked him and he dropped it. And then finally, the last guy, it had to be the last guy because Kingston wanted to get a hold of Jericho, so they milked that till the end. Here come Kingston in with a kendo stick. And now, everybody was in the ring. Everybody's already bleeding. They've got multiple foreign objects in the ring. They've got 23 minutes left on the air. And I'm thinking, what in the flying fuck? Kingston has a bottle of rubbing alcohol. But somehow they got it away from him, or he dropped it, or whatever. It fell out of the ring. And then Ty Conti was trying to shove the bottle of rubbing alcohol back through the cyclone fence cage. But did you see? It was just too big. It wouldn't go through the fucking chain link, but she managed to spring a leak in the side of the fucking bottle. So as she's trying to shove it, rubbing alcohol is shooting out toward the person, I think it was Jericho, that she's trying to shove it into. So chairs, sticks, table, rubbing alcohol. They powerbombed Hager through the table. And then Wheeler Useless dumps out 10,000 thumbtacks. and they peeled the canvas and the padding back on one of the rings. So one ring has thumbtacks in it. So if you've got a lick of sense, you ain't going to take a bump. And the other ring, half of the canvas and the padding is rolled up and the boards are exposed. So if you've got a lick of sense, you ain't going to take a bump. So now, if anybody does that, somebody else besides Santana is going to get hurt because it's all sloppy and crowded and filled with furniture. And they go to another break. And they come back and they got 15 minutes left on the air. And the morons are taking bumps and thousands of thumbtacks. And I just thought, they did all this. They promoted this, blood and guts, and they're doing all this to themselves, and they're hurting themselves. And the viewership, they went back from 700 and something thousand people to the million people that they started out with when Punk came back fucking 9 months ago and has been eroded away since then. This is the best. This is the best. They are pretty much literally setting each other on fire and disemboweling each other with sharp implements to get 1 million people to watch this show, which is what they get every time they hot shot. And in 3 weeks, they'll be back to 800,000. But what are they going to do? What would they have to promise or advertise to get 1.5 million? We're going to televise a live public disemboweling. And somebody who picks the lucky number will get the fucking entrails delivered to them in a fucking box a week after the match. Jericho did the fire extinguisher spot. There's another thing. That's not a heel spot. That's a babyface spot. Dipshit. I've told you this before a few weeks ago, the last time you did it. He just likes to hear people cheer for him. If a heel uses the fire extinguisher, the people pop on it and cheer and laugh because they like it. Because it's odd looking and it makes a big fucking psh. That's why the babyface, as the last resort to get out from under the heel, is the one who finds and uses the fire extinguisher, because that gets the people cheering and up and happy for the start of his comeback. Then Ty Conti tried to do something, and here came, I thought her name was Ruby Soho, but somebody called her Ruby Riot. I must have been dreaming.
Taz accidentally said that. And also in the same match, Jim Ross kept calling Claudio Cesaro, so it was happening all over the place.
So Jericho then goes to the top of the cage, and Kingston follows him, and they fight on top. Glad to see they're doing something that's never been done before. Then Sammy goes to the top of the cage, and all of this took forever. It was not transpiring quickly. Then Kingston throws Sammy off the top of the cage. Brian, did you freeze frame that long shot for a second?
I did not. I watched it, though, because all of a sudden I'm like, what is that giant box?
There you go.
Down at ringside, because I did not see that there before.
They had shot around this all night, but the people in the building couldn't have avoided seeing it. It was almost as big as the ring. At ringside, next to one of the 2 rings that they were doing this business in, was a giant, triple-sized, double-height, black sheet-covered table with nobody sitting at it. Just a production table, but completely empty, covered up with a sheet, 3 times the size and twice the height as normal. And when Kingston threw Sammy off the top, Sammy just takes the dead man fall and goes straight through that thing. It was a fucking airbag. Remember last year it was Jericho. Instead of blood and guts, they ought to called it cardboards and fucking airbags. That table, that structure, that apparatus was sitting there the whole night with the people in the building looking at it. And you had to know. Well, I mean, that, unless the only way they could have made it more obvious is if they'd drawn a bullseye on top of the fucking thing.
For comparison, when Chris Jericho last year, or whatever, 2 years ago, landed on the crash pad, it was nowhere near as egregious as this.
No, because this was an obvious thing that had no purpose. Taken up an entire section of front that would have been the front few rows of ringside. There was no equipment there. There's nobody sitting at it. There was no function for this area otherwise than to catch a body falling from 25 feet in the air. And that's what it did. And a 20-foot bump was a break spot. They just said, well, Sammy's dead. We'll be right back. Match goes on. So they come back, and Kingston and Jericho are still on top of the cage. It's been 3 minutes during the break. And the rest of the match may still be going on down below. We don't know because it's being ignored. And then suddenly here comes Claudio, climbs up to the top of the cage and saves Kingston. But Daddy Mac comes to the top of the cage. And Claudio finally grabs Jericho and gives him the big swing on the top. The people wanted to see the big swing. I did too. But the rest of this thing would not fucking end. Not end, ever. At this point, I wrote, Ian Rotten should have promoted this match and paid the guys off in hot dogs and pain pills. This is national television. There's mainstream name talent involved in this match. It's a big NBA building, and it looks like the worst combat zone wrestling horse shit that you would ever see on fucking Twitter. Insulting the wrestling business, insulting the people that took the time to be talented in it, and that just because the booker is a mark that likes chaos, the owner, I should say, is a booker that the owner likes chaos as a mark, they have to give it to him. No matter whether it does anything for the business's public relations or not. So anyway, finally on the top of the cage, Daddy Mac tapped out to Claudio because Kingston had Jericho and Claudio had Daddy Mac, and Daddy Mac tapped out, and Kingston was mad because he thought that he had got Jericho to tap out. And all I can say is thank fuck that Bryan Danielson wasn't in this. Not only might he have gotten further injured, but it just would have been an insult to a guy of talent like that to be involved in shit that any fucking garbage goof that works full-time at a Valvoline station could fucking do on an indie show. So then, explain this to me. I think I know the reason. Every one of the babyface team then climbs to the top of the cage to celebrate the victory. Moxley could barely make it. Claudio had to drag him up. And Jericho was still laying there. And all of his hated enemies, including Kingston, were just sitting there looking at him 5-6 feet away, ignoring him. And then Jericho and Daddy Mac kind of crawl over to the edge of the cage to give the babyfaces room to lift their hands. But still, there was all the babyfaces just like taking a curtain call. Okay, the play is over now. Thank you guys for coming. We've had a wonderful time. And there's the fucking guy that started this whole thing that they wanted to tear limb from limb. 10 feet away from him on the top of the cage. They don't even touch him or look at him. You know why? I guarantee I know why. Chris Jericho got up there and figured out he couldn't climb back down. That's the only explanation. Any fucking heel would have got out of there if he could when he saw that he was trapped with the babyfaces. Any babyface, I think Kingston actually did. It looked like he talked to him once. But any babyface would have gone, get the fuck out of here so we don't have to throw you off the cage too. But he just laid there. I guarantee you, Jericho realized at that moment that he couldn't climb off that cage without killing himself. Why else wouldn't he leave?
I don't know. I think that's the only reason anyone could come up with.
So this was...
Maybe he was afraid to go down because Santana was still down there.
The guy with one leg. I think I'd be scared of being up on a 25-foot fucking cage with 5 guys than on the floor with one guy with a bad leg.
By the way, is this a crutch for Jericho? This is the second straight blood and guts match Jericho climbs to the top of the cage.
Well, yeah, because that way all the attention can be on him. He can get all the spotlight, and everybody else working hard in the match can be forgotten about.
2 blood and guts matches, 2 people that go off the top of the roof of the cage. So now we should just expect it, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a thing that they do now. But again, free television, fucking an hour worth of this stuff. No War Games match ever went an hour, ever. For the same reason, because people would get sick and tired of seeing this chaos and it becomes unbelievable. And the War Games matches, they weren't allowed to bring in any inanimate object that they so desired because they were already in a gimmick match. They didn't need to gimmick it. But, it's embarrassing that people think when anybody that happens to be flipping by, as they say, civilians, outsiders, mainstream folks, people not in the wrestling bubble, it's embarrassing to me that they think that this is what wrestling is. And they watch this and they go, well, we don't want to have our kids watching this shit, or we don't want to watch this shit, or look at how stupid those guys are. They're all a bunch of drug addicts and morons. And you watch this program, you do not get any alternate viewpoint. You don't get the, God, look at the talent that Bryan Danielson, the athletic ability he's showing. Or look at the verbal capacity of a CM Punk, or what. You get a bunch of guys fake fighting in barbed wire and thumbtacks. And it's the most unsavory, disgusting bunch of bullshit that I can imagine why anybody would want people to think about wrestling like this. I can't get it. And that's my thoughts on blood and guts. I love the blood, and I even love the guts. If people can believe that the two guys are actively trying to separate each other from their blood and guts. But when it's a fucking mud show, phony looking, obviously fake, contrived, stupid, nonsensical, illogical bunch of mayhem, makes everybody in our business look like a goddamn idiot. And that's all I got to say about it.
All right, well, that was AEW Blood and Guts.